And yes, welcome back to another episode, guys, of Listen Up Maryland, presented by Dempsey's in Sportsland, alongside Ryan Renner, Phil Becerra. And boy, oh boy, did we have a weekend to recap, Ryan. We kept leaving it off. We said, well, we're not going to go on tonight. We're not going to go on this night. So we'll go on this morning. So we're coming on 2 days before Thanksgiving. A lot to talk about. I believe it was 3 games that we're recapping. UConn women's basketball. Is that right?
Yeah, 3 games.
3 games, a lot to talk about in a short period of time. Ryan, let's get right down into it. Let's just go over the game against Minnesota. UConn women's basketball, as we promised you all, we'll try to get to every single game to recap it. We're going to do a little special here, about 30 minutes, Ryan. Again, UConn defeated Minnesota. Minnesota moved to 3-2 at the time. What was that game, on Friday or Saturday, I believe?
It was on Saturday, yeah.
Saturday, okay. Saturday, and number 2 UConn topped Minnesota, Ryan. Just a quick recap to this game, and I want to talk a lot about UConn's first loss, which came against South Carolina yesterday. I know I was at your house then. Talk a little bit about what happened, though, against Minnesota. One thing that I really liked about this game, head coach Gino, again, referred to the game against Minnesota, compared to the game, their opening game against Arkansas, where they're allowed 80 points, I think. I like this game because they only allowed 58 against Minnesota. And the Golden Gophers, I think they had their biggest quarter was in the first, and that's when they scored 18. But after that, it was all downhill, right? And I know we talked about that in UConn's first outing, about the defense tightening up a little bit more. And when they allowed 80 points against Arkansas, now, just my opinion, Ryan, Arkansas may be a little bit better. Again, that's just me, better than Minnesota. But at any rate, they got, UConn got the job done. They kept scoring easily, and in my opinion, when the teams that are in the top 25, like if you're scoring 70, 80, 90 points a game, right, against them kind of teams, and then if you can somehow find an answer on defense, it's going to be tough for anyone to stop Paige and these Huskies, because they have if you don't have Paige, you can go to Kristen Williams. If you don't have Kristen Williams, you have Azzi Fudd, although she is a freshman coming in. We expect her to play a bigger role as the season rolls along. I'm not looking to next year for Azzi Fudd to come through. I'm looking as far as this year.
Yeah, and it might have been a little opening game jitters for the Huskies against that first game against Arkansas when they allowed 80 points, but much better defensive outing against Minnesota on Saturday. Of course, Kristen Williams, you just mentioned her, 31 points on 12 of 14 shooting in that game Saturday. Olivia Nelson, another key starter for this team, 8 rebounds. And I really like Paige Becker. She didn't have as many points as the opening game, but she did have 8 assists and 0 turnovers. Turnovers are very important in basketball. That's a key stat. It gets overlooked sometimes, but 0 turnovers, that's very good for a starting point guard. And the Huskies, that's something I like about this team as well. They're a very disciplined team. They don't turn the ball over that much. And Coach Gino, he's a very good coach. So he's coached this team to be very disciplined, make good passes and good decisions throughout the course of the game. And again, like I mentioned in their first game against Arkansas, they shot the ball very well. Their first game, they shot 57% from the field. In this game, they shot 62% from the field. So it's pretty impressive what this team has done thus far. Of course, we'll get to the game where they lost against South Carolina. But in this game against Minnesota, they were very disciplined. They won the rebound battle again, and they shot very good from the field. So they look pretty good on Saturday night.
Let's take a look at the scoring box real quick, if you want to pull that up with me on your computer. Again, Minnesota, their biggest quarter was the first quarter, and they scored 18. After that, they had 17 in the second, only 8 in the third, and then in the fourth, they had 15. We're gonna get in. I mean, UConn is not the only team that is known to be perfect, and then I'm telling you, UConn can break, and we just witnessed that the other day. I was at your house yesterday, rather. I was up with you at your house and said, Phil, you want me to turn the game on for you at 12 o'clock? Said, sure, why not? They were playing in the tournament in the Bahamas. I didn't even realize that they were playing because you checked ESPN the other day and you're like, well, ESPN never updated the schedule. But yet when you looked on Google, it said that they had a game against the South. What was it? The Florida Bulls, I think they are.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
the
South Florida, right?
South Florida. And then they had a matchup against number 1 South Carolina, although we didn't realize, South Florida, you're right. They beat them. We'll go over that one. And then number 1 South Carolina. But we, going over the original episode, we thought that they wouldn't see number 1 South Carolina until January 27th.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was because of the tournament. We didn't realize, we didn't picture it all together. But South Carolina did win. They played in that championship game, and we'll go over that in just a little bit.
Okay. All right. So getting back on track, looking at the box score against Minnesota, just take a look at that. When you look, I looked and what really stood out to me, Paige Beckers, she follows up a career night that she had in the opening game. But then I'm not saying she's going to be on every game. I understand, this is a college team, still learning experience, only second year. But again, she opened up with 8 points in the second game to start her second season at UConn. That's what kind of stood out to me. But I want to go back because, like Michaela Daniels says, I want to look like a fool just saying, okay, well, Paige Beckers only had 8 points. The sky is falling. Like, no. But what Michaela Daniels pointed out, and I thought was very important, I'm glad because I never forgot about that. When we had her on the episode, Michaela said it's not always about the scoring. People sometimes look at the points per game and, look how many points the players scored to contributed to each game. It's not only about that in basketball. And you're right. I'm glad you bring that up because what you had, I listed down the other day, and would you already say it right here? Michaela Daniels, Paige Beckers had 8 assists, 0 turnovers. That was against Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah. So see, that's what I want to talk to you about. So the times where you can't get scoring going on the floor, how important is it to get your rebounds, get your assists, because they show up in the box score too if you look deep enough.
Yeah, and that's what makes Paige Beckers a unique player, very special player. When she can't get it going from the field. Now, of course, she did still shoot 3 from 7, so she didn't get as many shots up as she did in that first game against Arkansas. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not always about how many points you score in the game of basketball. It's about how you're contributing, getting those offensive rebounds or defensive rebounds, or just getting assists and making your teammates better and getting your teammates involved. And that's why this UConn team is so special as well, is because they have so many good players. And Azzi Fudd, like you mentioned, we expect her to play big minutes throughout this whole entire season.
And she
played
did
22 minutes
she did
again.
against the second game. She had 22 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 points, but again, I talked about that in the first podcast when we were covering UConn. I expect Gino to not push her in the offense, just maybe a little bit at a time, and again, she had 22 minutes. So again, that's all you can really ask out of a true freshman. I mean, come on, 5 points, but still 22 minutes on the floor. That's building up confidence.
Yeah, it builds up confidence and just slowly ease her into the system that Coach Gino has built and slowly build up that chemistry with the rest of her teammates. And I expect her to just keep on blossoming throughout this whole entire season.
Okay. And then you had Azzi. Okay, we went over Azzi Fudd and then Kristen Williams. I want to point her out. Shout out to her. We had an episode, if you remember, February of this year. Kristen Williams scored 21 when UConn blew past St. John's last season. And by the way, it's good to see fans back in the arenas, don't you think? That's something I forgot to say, because we went over these games. Now, of course, close family members, friends, I guess, was allowed in the arenas last season. But man, it's great to see them at full capacity now, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it just makes the game so much more involving. And for the players, I'm sure it's big as well. You make a big shot, the fans get involved. They start screaming and yelling. There's just no other feeling like it really in any sport.
Yeah, so we expect well, and I'm not saying her counterpart, but again, this is it. Now it looks like that, when Paige Beckers isn't on her top A game, throwing up buckets, Paige buckets, like you call her. It might be come down to Kristen Williams now because she had a career high 31 points against, what was that, against Minnesota as well.
Yeah, and she's a senior guard, and there's a couple seniors on this team. So, with Paige being in her sophomore year, she still has a lot to learn. With the as much talent as she has, she still has things to learn from Coach Gino and her teammates as well. And when she's off, sometimes that's why I said this team's so special. They have so much depth. And Coach Gino, he recruits the best. So, when people are struggling on this team, they get further down in the season, they're struggling with their shots. They can't get anything going from the field. This team can step up on defense against some of these weaker teams. And that's really where it all starts for me, is on the defensive side of things. Because if you start creating turnovers and getting fast break points for your offense, that really gets an offense going. And when you can get those easy shots off of turnovers, it really just opens up the floor and opens up, the whole entire game for your offense and your defense.
Yeah, just shout out though to like Bailey Helgren for Minnesota, Jasmine Powell, Alexia Smith, Caroline Strandy. I think, sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Strandy, Grace Cumming,
Sarah
Aaron,
Scully as well.
Aaron Hedman. I mean, hats off to Minnesota though, because they did a great job, even though it was 88-58 ball game at the end. I mean, they did a great job limiting Paige Beckers, because you're mind blown from seeing all the highlights, and it kind of gets in your head, right? Like on game day, you're like, oh my God, we have to play Connecticut. And you already know who. It's no secret. I mean, other than the legendary coach Gino, where he doesn't play the game, he's on the sideline coaching, obviously. So we already know what player comes to mind. Now, when you think about UConn, it's no secret. It seems like almost like a professional NFL team. And I keep comparing it, but you think about these legendary players, even that are retired. You think about one guy. That's it. When you think about one team, diehard sports fans think about one guy that's associated with that team. In this case, one girl associated with this team, and she's currently playing right now. And again, it may be a long, long time before anybody like her comes along again. That's Paige Beckers. So again, I think it's important, and again, it's so hard to game plan for these Huskies, because you said it, Ryan. I don't know how you do it if you're a head coach for any other team facing UConn. If you game plan for Paige Beckers on the dump and rolls, the out route. I mean, she shoots threes so well. You said that to me earlier this year. If you put the whole game plan around her, it's what, 5 girls. It's 5-on-5. So I mean, it's just I don't know, because again,
Yeah,
if Azzy Fudd heats up, and then you have Kristen Williams, it's like usually sometimes you can game plan for just one player,
right.
But in this case, if it's not Paige Beckers, it's somebody else.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, the depth on this team. And if you double team Paige Becker, somebody's going to get open. And that's how the game of basketball is. It's a 5-on-5 game. So if you double team Paige Beckers, one of her, superstar teammates is going to get wide open. And that's probably why she had the most assists with 8 assists, is because when they double teamed her, she's passing to her open teammates and they're making the shots. So, a good job by the Huskies to, kind of, fend off the Minnesota defense and kind of adjust to Minnesota's defensive game plan. And, that led to their game on Sunday against South Florida.
Well, I said hats off to Minnesota. They did a really good job limiting Paige Beckers as far as scoring in the ball game. Again, at that time, next up for UConn was the South Florida Bulls, and we'll go over that game that happened this past weekend, and then we'll get to the first loss of the season, which I never saw coming because I didn't expect that they were going to play South Carolina this soon. But the tournaments pop up, and you don't expect it sometimes, Ryan. So look, but going back to Paige Beckers, that's what head coach Johnny Woods was referring to as well, because he just goes, "Oh, Gino, it's not fair." He's like, you're getting all these top recruits out of high school. But what he was also talking about was it's amazing to see what you just pointed out. Paige reads the field, the court, whatever you want to call it, so well. Because like you said, if you're covering her and she knows that she cannot score, she can't go in the paint, or she's blocked, she's blocked up well outside of out on top of the key, outside of the 3-point line, she can read. I mean, that's something that almost like it's so hard to teach. You were telling me you can't teach speed. We was talking about speed the other day. Well, to me, you can't. It's hard to even teach that. Like in the heat of the moment, because you don't know what
Yeah.
defense Minnesota is going to come out, or any team's going to bring at you. So I mean, it's amazing to me that even Paige Beckers can read the court that well and know. I mean, that's what's that. It starts with a C. Communication. You got to know where your players are.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important that, she's able to distribute the ball to all her teammates. But, with it only being her second season, I would expect this to come out of the senior guards on this team, or, most seniors in college basketball. But, for her to have the freshman year that she had, and that's why she was named the best women's basketball college player for her freshman year, is because her ability to not only score and pass. She just stuffs the stat sheet in whatever way she can, and she does whatever it takes to make her team win and put them in the best position to win on any given night.
All right, moving on to the South Florida game, Ryan. South Florida, they also rolled against South Florida. And in that game, 60-53. So a little bit of a decline if you want to pull that box score up on your screen. And then the Huskies then moved to 3-0 at the time over the weekend. A little bit of a decline again from the second game of the season. They only put up 60 points compared to their first two. They had 95 and 88. It was 60-53, the final. It was finally a ranked team. How about that at the time? South Florida, number 23. I know you pointed out we're going to go over the top 25, although they might not be updated, the rankings. Usually you said they come out on a Tuesday, but for some reason they're not out yet.
Yeah, I think they were supposed to come out on Monday, and then when UConn did win this game against South Florida, they were going on to play South Carolina on Monday. So then they said they'd delay it for the rankings to come out on Tuesday, but they're not out yet. So
sounds like us
it
delaying
is what it
episodes
is.
all the time.
Yeah, you know how much I dislike all these rankings and the power rankings. So it is what it is. But we'll move on and just
Well,
talk
that's
about
why I like to talk about it, to get you heated. So
yeah, I mean, I just really can't stand, the committee and, how they rank these teams sometimes. So it really does get me going sometimes.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll cut it right there then, and we'll talk about the recap for South Florida. Maybe you'll calm down a little bit then, because that was another win for the UConn Huskies. And I know you're a big fan of the UConn Huskies, as well as me over here on this side. That's why we're going to try to, again, recap every game of this season. Still young season. That moved South Florida, Ryan, to 3-2. Connecticut Huskies 3-0. In that game, Paige Beckers had, again, 38 minutes. She's out on the floor a lot. She heated back up. She had 21 points, 7 assists, 3 rebounds. What was your biggest takeaway of this game? And I believe this was the first. Was this the first game in the tournament?
This was a second game. I think the game on Saturday was their first game of the tournament. But yeah, Paige Beckers was 3 of 10 from 3-point range. She finished with a team high again, 21 points. She had a couple fourth quarter baskets to really seal the game. And this was a close game. They only won by 7 points. Azzi Fudd, she logged 27 minutes, another 20-plus minute game for her off of the bench. She shot 6 of 9 from the 3-point range. She had 18 points as well. So really having an outstanding season so far for Azzi Fudd. The way she's able to come off the bench is huge for this team. It helps the starters out so much when they're struggling, or even if they're not struggling. She just provides such a boost off of the bench. And South Florida is a good team, even though they have a 3-2 record now. On Monday, they beat number 9 Oregon, 71-62. So South Florida's losses, they only have 2 losses. One of them, of course, is to UConn. The other one was to Tennessee by 3 points. So The two losses that they have, in my opinion, are two teams that should be ranked in the top 10 still, with Tennessee and UConn, two very good teams. So I would watch out for this South Florida team. I expect them to, I know this is a long ways away, but in the March Madness tournament, I think the South Florida team has what it takes to maybe make a run, because they seem like they're a pretty good team.
They do, and they have some great ball players, like you mentioned, man. I mean, again, they really limited Connecticut. Again, close, tight game, Ryan. I mean, you're talking 60-53 ball game. So girls like Shea Leverett, Elisa Pinzon, Sydney Harvey, Maria Alvarez. They have Ariel Wilson. They have a lineup that's definitely it's fit to tie other teams in a headache, if you will. Yeah, we'll have to see what happens with this South Florida team. But again, right down in your neck of the woods, right down in South Florida, where it's nice and hot year round. So yeah, we'll see. They did a good job keeping pace with UConn. Maybe this game should have been a caution sign to us about going into the next game we're talking about, because the next game, I'm telling you, this is going to bring up. I told you yesterday, I'm like, man, Ryan, and we'll go ahead and get into it right now. We'll talk about what happened yesterday against South Carolina. Easily put, easily said. You can't really put any. You can't beat around the bush, as you want to say. I mean, Gino does a good job saying it how it is. He admits it. When you're better, you're better. When you're not better, you're not better. He simply put, Ryan, and what do you make of this? He said after yesterday's loss to South Carolina, 73-57, we talked about it. We talked about how this defense for UConn has a lot of work to do. But not only that, it looks like the past two games, again, they scored 60, then they couldn't even get to 60. They had 57 points yesterday, and they fell to 3-1. They said, listen to this. Number one, South Carolina, they're 6-0. Okay? They're 6-0. Now, I'm not going to sit here, Ryan, today and say, because this is going to get heated now. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, UConn doesn't have what it takes. That's it, Ryan. One loss, the sky's falling. That's it. It's the end. UConn is done. No. This team is way too loaded. UConn's way too loaded to get pushed off to the side, okay? But what I'm saying is there's still a lot of work to be done before we reach March, or even before UConn sees South Carolina again in their regular season matchup. So what my point is, Gino's been around a long time. He's the owner of, I don't know, some different kind of cheeses I've read. I think he has some wine. He loves to drink wine. He's a big taster of foods. He loves to go out and taste some foods every once in a while. He's been around a while, so he knows more than just basketball, all right? But what I'm saying is, with this core group, he's worked with a lot of legendary players that's going into the WNBA, legendary players through UConn, Storrs, Connecticut. Ryan, with this core group, a lot of new faces, can he gather them up and get them together on the right page to be able to compete? Because if you ask me, yes, the faces on here, they're a team that is expected to compete. But if you keep dropping games like this, there's going to be 10, 15, maybe even 20 other teams that are going to get looked at before the UConn Huskies.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gino is going to pull this team together. I'm not concerned at all. But it's still a long way to go until March. You still got, plenty of games before this team starts seeing a bigger level of competition with teams like Tennessee and Oregon and South Carolina, again, further down the schedule. But, for Coach Gino, he's always done a very good job to keep his team at a winning state. But, I mean, I think it's just for UConn, playing 3 games in a row, I think really took it out of them. And for them to only beat South Florida by 7 points, and South Florida sticking into that game the whole way through for all 4 quarters, I think that really might have took it out of them. And for South Carolina, they've already played more games. They're 6-0. They're the number one team for a reason. And it just seemed like when it got to that fourth quarter, it was like a 15-point game, or excuse me, it was like a 3 or a 5-point game going into the fourth quarter yesterday in that game against South Carolina. And I think UConn, they just run out of juice. They ran out of energy. And South Carolina just wanted to win a little bit more than UConn did. And it really showed up in that fourth quarter because, like you mentioned to me yesterday, the Huskies only scored 3 points in the fourth quarter. I'm not sure what it really was, but, with them playing 3 games in a row, they have to face the best team in the nation, and South Carolina is number one for a reason. So I agree with you completely. They still have a lot to learn. They still got it's a long season ahead. They got a couple of days off. I think the next game is either Friday or Saturday for this Huskies team. So they got some time to look at some film, look at what they can improve upon. I'm not concerned about this Huskies team at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we are looking at the correct schedule this time, remember we talked about that big break. So this actually favors UConn and Gino because again, he came out yesterday and he said, let me pull it up so I'm not putting words into other people's mouth. He said that, let's see, he said that this is the best team in the country. UConn great. Or excuse me, that was actually the analyst of the Gamecocks said that. So they said that this is the best team in the country. And that's all you can really say at this point, because I mean, until we start seeing some competition, and we knew, we pointed out that game in the opening segment of this series that we'll go through of women's basketball this year. We specifically pointed out that game. You pointed it out before I could even get to it. You said, Phil, that game against someone in South Carolina, again, we expect Connecticut to roll a lot this year, but those are the kind of games that they don't make or break you per se. But again, they may drop you some in the rankings because this is college basketball. So maybe if you want to look at it like that, but it's more or less a timetable or an outlook of the future, if you will, because again, if they get blown out again against South Carolina, now again, if Connecticut loses in late January when they run into South Carolina again, but it's a closer score, all right, then there's some hope for March when they rolls around, if they run into them again, if UConn can make it that far, because I don't know about you. I really expect Dawn Staley to maybe get this team to the final game. I mean, this roster, Ryan, and that's what I wanted to go over with you. I think I'm pointing out 3 or 4 freshmen out of this whole South Carolina ball team. So Dawn Staley has a lot to work with, a lot of experience. You have Olivia Thompson at guard. You have Zia Cook, Ania Russell, Destiny Henderson, Aaliyah Boston. It's like you and I have heard of these names before. If somebody said, okay, you've heard of this name? Well, heck yeah, we've heard of it, man. They're number one for a reason. You have Victoria Saxton, Camilla Cardoso, and a player that I love, 6'2" guard, Lily Grissett, and out of North Carolina. Man, I tell you what, it's going to get fun. It's going to get fun. Again, I don't know. Heads may turn if Connecticut gets blown out again in late January. I know we talked about it. I want to try to actually get us tickets to see if we can make it out there to that ball game because, I mean, I expect the head coach, Gino, to tighten up in that game. And I think that's going to be a really great matchup. And, hey, it might be like I said, it might be a preview of what's to come in March.
Yeah, it very well could be. And there's still a lot of games to go between now and that game, or the rematch game against UConn and South Carolina. But yeah, I mean, I would expect this UConn team and Gino to have his Huskies ready for that game. against South Carolina again. And if it's another blowout, I think then we can start, raising some eyebrows for the level of concern heading into March Madness then, because, if the Huskies get blown out again right before March Madness starts to South Carolina, then you start asking questions like, how far is UConn actually going to go in March Madness if they play South Carolina again? Is it going to be the same storyline? Is it going to be another blowout? So a lot of questions get raised if they do get blown out again, but still a whole season almost to go before their rematch game against South Carolina in January.
What do you make of this, though? I'm glad I just looked at it. What do you make? Because I had it on my notes, and I almost forgot to mention it before we go off. The Huskies were held, again, you talk about this roster up and down. We talk about it all season, preseason. First episode, how loaded, brand new faces, Paige Becker, second year coming in, arguably the top player in college basketball. Ryan, they were held to 3 points in the fourth quarter. I understand you're not going to be perfect every game, but this is UConn. This is UConn. 3 points. I couldn't believe it because I ran upstairs with you yesterday, and I came back down, and I saw the final score. I knew they were going to lose. 73-57 was the final. But again, I heard the commentator, and they go, yeah, South Carolina holds UConn to 3 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, South Carolina's defense is unreal. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's Dawn Staley again. And like you mentioned, I think we kind of all expect now for Dawn Staley and this Gamecocks team to make a run into March Madness. And it's still a long season. But like I mentioned before, UConn, I think them playing 3 games in a row, them having a close contest with South Florida, South Carolina was rolling. They were on a 5-game win streak heading into this game.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the Huskies had a 3-game win streak. But I think it speaks to, Paige Becker still being a sophomore, Azzy Fudd still, she's a freshman. And something that stood out to me, Azzy Fudd only played 10 minutes in this game, and she only shot one field goal. It just doesn't really make any sense to me. All 3 games before this, she played at least 20 minutes, and she scored 7 points and 2 20-point games. So it really just doesn't make any sense to me why Coach Gino would kind of switch up the way that his players are, the minutes that they're getting, because UConn was rolling. They won 3 games in a row. Azzy Fudd playing 20+ minutes and contributing to the way this team's playing and the offense and the defensive side of things. And for her to only log 10 minutes in this game, I don't know if it's because those 3 games in a row, but whatever it was, I think it kind of just messed up the rhythm of this Huskies team a little bit.
I understand that, but you also have to understand the reason I cut you off, because I heard them talking about that on the game when the game was on yesterday. You have to remember, Ryan, this is still a young player, and like I said, the confidence level. I think when you talk about when you mention about messing the team's rhythm up, let's talk about messing Azzy Fudd's rhythm up.
Yeah.
You don't want, I mean, you got to remember, this is the top team in the country, South Carolina. So I think Gino is just concerned, okay, losing that badly. He's kind of just concerned. You already had, she finished with 0, but obviously she was struggling a bit there, which is expected when you play the Gamecocks. I mean, come on. But at the same time, I think it's the fact that you only keep her in for so long, because if you see her start struggling, guess what she's going to think now? In every game going forward, Azzy Fudd's going to think, she can't do this. She can't score. She can't. So Gino gave her a little taste of what it's like in November, right before Thanksgiving, all right, in a tournament, to say the least, to maybe heat up a little bit. She didn't really. That's fine. You're a freshman. But at the same time, Ryan, I just want to sit here and tell you, I understand every game is big. But let me tell you this. He might have did that because it was a tournament game. And not saying regular season games are no good, but when you play these tournament games, we saw how loud it was in there yesterday. We saw the people, the crowd. I think the fact of when you get to March, because we talk about it in any sport, how different it is when you get to the postseason. So you got to think about that because Azzy Fudd has never been in hostile territory before, right?
Right.
So, and I understand that in this March Madness tournament, you don't go play home and away. So it just depends. I mean, how many fans are going to show up for one side? How many fans are going to show up for the other side? It's at one specific arena, the whole tournament. Maybe the final. I think the final game moves somewhere else. But to say the least, once you're surrounded with non-UConn fans in March, because we don't know, South Carolina may dominate the arena if these two run into each other in the postseason. I highly doubt that. Not saying anything rude about UConn's fans. I'm sure UConn fans will show up, but like I said, it's just it's the fact of the matter of again, experience under your belt and getting ready for March, because we still expect UConn to be in. But I think now you're right. It's a question of, and again, we're not going to even jump to that conclusion yet, but we'll wait until at least end of January. But I think it's right now, just how far are you going to be able to make it?
Yeah, and maybe resting her a little bit, right? Playing 3 games in a row, still a freshman, still a long season to go. And yeah, that's very true. Like you mentioned, I mean, and South Carolina is number 1 for a reason. Such a great defensive team, and Dawn Staley's really done a good job with all her juniors and seniors this year, really coaching them up on offense. They can definitely score at the best of them, but to hold UConn to 57 points, that's really a accomplishment in itself. And the final from this game, 73-57, it really doesn't tell the whole story for me because it was a competitive game for all 3 quarters. But in the 16-point blowout, it just seems like it wasn't a game at all. But for the first 3 quarters, this was a classic game. But South Carolina, they just wanted it more in the fourth quarter.
And now you take a look at the schedule, and a lot more teams now from our first episode that we went over, a lot more teams now are starting to get ranked. So now you have number 10, Louisville. They could cause a problem. You pointed out that game. They could cause a problem December 19th for the UConn team. You have Georgia Tech now is ranked at number 18. You have UCLA coming up December 11th. They're ranked at number 20. So, I mean, again, as you go on, it's also, Gino is considering that now. As you go on, okay, what teams, if we start to heat up, what other teams around the country are going to start heating up? Because right now, again, I might point out a school that might not ever be ranked during the whole season, but it's just an example. Let's say Marquette, Xavier, Georgetown, and St. John's.
Conference games, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, I understand they probably won't ever be ranked this season, but again, I'm just pointing them for it. Marquette, Xavier, Georgetown, and St. John's. They come around the end of the season, around mid-February to end of February. What if all them schools start to heat up? And I know this is in like a dream world for them schools, but what if they all start falling in the top 25? You're like, oh my gosh, now UConn, all of a sudden the schedule just flips script. And everybody that thought, including us, we're guilty of it. Everybody thought UConn would roll. Maybe you didn't. Everybody thought UConn would roll through the whole schedule, except for the teams that had numbers next to them. You're right. It's a long season.
Yeah, and anything can happen on any given night. And the game on Friday is going to be big against Seton Hall. It's at Seton Hall. And why I say it's big, it's going to start the conference games for this Huskies team. So even though all of the conference teams or all the teams in the Huskies conference, they might not be ranked, but these are still huge games. The UConn still has to win their conference. So it's very important that UConn gets back on track. They quickly blow off this loss against South Carolina. It was a big game. It was an important game. I'm not just saying look past it and don't think about it at all. But they have to move on.
Learning experience.
Yeah, right. It was a learning experience. and then they have to get ready for this game at Seton Hall because, if they start dropping these conference games, it's going to be a long season for this Huskies team. So it's very important Friday night that they get prepared, they get ready for this game, and they show up against Seton Hall.
Yeah, and again, that is Friday, December 3rd, Ryan. December 3rd. So they have this Thanksgiving week off to enjoy with their families, their friends, and then they return. They'll probably have a walkthrough, probably first practice, I'm guessing, Monday the 29th, something like that.
Yeah, start practice up again, and
they
get to join this week with their family and friends. So
yeah, and then they'll go in. I have 7:00 on December the 3rd, Connecticut at Seton Hall. Yeah, guys, watching this, make sure you all subscribe, comment, like, and you tell us how you think UConn women's basketball. I tell you, Ryan, I pointed this to you. Pointed this out the other day. I said, Ryan, man, when we discussed the WNBA and the NCAA women's basketball, the topics surrounding these leagues, we're getting a lot of feedback. So again, we appreciate that, and we appreciate everyone viewing these videos and supporting us on Listen Up.
Yeah, and we'll continue to break down these UConn games. I know I like doing them. I'm sure you do too. So a lot of Huskies fans out there. We appreciate all the support, and I know UConn has a huge fan base, so we definitely appreciate it.
Paige Buckets appreciates it. Everybody appreciates it, Ryan. So again, let's take a look at the not the standings, but the rankings. And then we will head on out of here. I don't know, Ryan. I mean, I'm looking right now. I mean, obviously South Carolina has a stronghold of that number one spot for, I'm guessing, for most of the season, because we'll go over their schedule maybe another day, maybe late January when UConn plays them again. But other than that number one spot, right now it looks like Connecticut is not threatening to jump up in the number one spot like I thought. But other than that number one spot, I mean, what other teams might shake up the top 5, top 10?
Yeah, I mean, I think Maryland had a huge win against the Baylor Bears on Saturday, I believe that was. So I think Maryland, Indiana, NC State, I think they all move up. Of course, Baylor might move above NC State with or of course Baylor lost, so I think they're gonna move down. Stanford 1-1 still. Oregon, I expect Oregon to drop now. Of course, with that loss to South Florida. So. And Tennessee, they got a huge win. They got a huge overtime win against Texas. So I think Texas falls, and I think Tennessee moves up. Of course, Tennessee did beat South Florida too. And I said, I believe it was the first episode we did on UConn. They play Tennessee later down in the season. So this Tennessee team, I really like this team. I think they're a good team. They're always in it at the end. And I think they'll get a big boost in the rankings.
Brenda Freese, I know I had to. You mentioned Maryland, Brenda Freese. I'm always reading about her and catching up with Maryland. Obviously, we'll try to cover a lot of Maryland too. But yeah, man, that's credit to you. I think you gave me this, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. But I'll keep reading through that, and like you said, we'll promise to keep getting our predictions out and break down these ball games. You said it. It's a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and of course, hopefully the rankings come out later today. This is still week 2 we're going over, so that's why I'm saying, I can't say for sure whether these teams are going to move up or down because the new rankings aren't out yet. So hopefully they'll come out at some point later today.
All right, listen up. Presented by Dempsey's and Sportsland. Ryan, this looks like it's the last episode before Thanksgiving. So I want to shout out to everybody. I'll let you take your time to do so as well. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Again, this marks about a little over a year on this podcast. We appreciate you all, and we hope you have a happy Thanksgiving with with your families and your friends, and enjoy the turkey, enjoy the stuffing, enjoy the gravy. I know your dad, I just had to shout out to Ed on this one. Ed loves to put gravy on everything.
Yeah, he always has. Yeah, you got to, right? It's
Oh,
Thanksgiving
yeah.
gravy. It's important to the turkey and all everything you eat on Thanksgiving. You got to put gravy on all of it.
I know it's getting cold. I'm clocking in around 40 degrees right now, so it's getting cold, Ryan. I tell you, it's exciting. Not only cold, but exciting. I mean, here we are coming up in the end of the NFL season. I mean, things are going to get heated up. I'm sure you're staying busy over there.
Yeah, of course you still got men's basketball going on, of course, and
Oh my.
NBA, NHL's in full swing. My Florida Panthers looking pretty good so
You
far.
have you have a good reason to look forward to May and June, huh?
Yeah, I mean, so far the Cowboys, they look like they're gonna make the playoffs, and Florida Panthers looking pretty good. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, before you know it, Double B will be coming back on with us for the spring preview, huh? For spring
Yeah,
training, and then the season. It flies by.
yeah, can't wait for that one. Always up for some Orioles talk.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Ryan, I might see you on Thursday. And again, if I don't, happy Thanksgiving. And again, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And I know that you'll catch you said, Phil, I'll be up nice and early for that Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade with Savannah Guthrie and company on Thursday morning. So you said, Phil, I said, you think you'd be up, Ryan, that early? Because Ryan tends to sleep in a lot. And you're like, oh, I'll be up.
Yeah, I mean it's a tradition, right? You got to watch the parade, and then of course you got Bears and Lions. Always the 12 or 12:30 game that comes on before or during Thanksgiving, and then of course always got my Cowboys on Thanksgiving. So I can't wait to watch those games as well.
All right. Listen up, presented by Dempsey's in Sportsland. Ryan, it's been a pleasure. I'm out.